Yeah.
So what exactly is the earnest money for, and where does it go, and why does it determine how much you give versus a lower amount? Like you were saying, like you want to put more down if you were more interested.
Yeah.
Can you just explain
Sure.
that just a little bit?
So this is the amount of money that you're willing to put up as good faith that you are interested in this home, and if for any reason you don't fulfill your obligation to the contract that you break, you're willing to give that to the other person, right? So 60,000 is very attractive in the case that I shared with my sister, where they live in Los Angeles, and so what the seller looks at when they look at that contract is, okay, if these people break this contract, not with the terms that it allows them to break it, but if they break it outside of the terms, we get to keep 60 grand. So that's a very attractive offer for a seller to look at and go, oh yeah, these guys are willing to risk more money to move forward on the deal, and basically if they don't fulfill their obligations to what they offered us in this contract, we get to keep this earnest money. Now, the reality is, most people, there of course are situations where it happens, but most people are not going to break their obligation to the contract. That's why we write in there how long we think it's going to take us to do due diligence. So if you think it's going to take you 10 days to get a home inspector in there because they're booked out for 8 days, then of course you're going to want to write 10, 11, 12, however many days necessary. And as long as you fulfill your obligation to that contract, you are allowed to break it. And when you are allowed to break it under the terms that you've put in the contract to break it, you get your earnest money back. So in many cases, the earnest money is probably not going to be forfeited that often. I have seen it forfeited, just people make mistakes. It happens, and nobody's perfect. And so I have seen where they lost track of time. Like literally, I know an individual who represented a buyer, and for whatever reason in their head, they thought the due diligence was tomorrow, but it really was today. And so they were kind of sitting down, and they ended up deciding, you know what, let's cancel the contract. They thought they were the day before, right? So they're having a conversation at about 6 or 7 o'clock at night after the client gets home from work. And they're like, okay, yeah, I think it's, based off of all the things that we found on the home inspection, let's cancel the contract. So the agent then sent the cancellation of the contract to the listing agent. The listing agent says, well, this due diligence expired like 2 hours ago. It expired today at 5 p.m. It was like 7 p.m. And of course they lost their earnest money because they were off by a couple hours, right? And that was, they literally thought their due diligence was for the next day. So there are those reasons why, it can happen. But oftentimes it just shows how serious you are. I'm willing to risk this much. If I don't fulfill my obligations, you get to have this much.
So is that really important, would you say? I mean, is that necessary? Can you buy a house without doing that? I mean, what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, great question. So, every market's got their go-to amount. So, in 2008, 9, 10, I don't remember when my sister bought her house, the going for the neighborhood that she was buying into in Los Angeles, according to, and I never fact-checked this, but according to the real estate agent, they needed to have put $60,000 of earnest money to be a competitive offer. I didn't question it because Los Angeles is significantly more than Salt Lake City, especially back then. And I, for years and years, invested in upstate New York City, Kansas City, and of course here in Salt Lake City. So here in Salt Lake City, depending on the price point, earnest money very commonly can be anywhere from, I would say, $1,000 to $3,000. Very common for entry-level homes. Of course, if you go higher price point, you're maybe seeing more earnest money being offered with the contract. In Kansas City, when I used to invest there, I invested in Kansas City for almost 10 years, and my earnest money, when I would make an offer for entry-level homes, was as little as $10 sometimes, up to $500. Very rarely did I offer $1,000 for an entry-level home in Kansas City. Now, this was probably more, I did most of my purchasing about 10 years ago, and then held a bunch of stuff over there. It's probably a little bit more, but it was still significantly smaller. I mean, like earnest money for $10. I mean, that's just like, here, if you wrote an offer for $10, you could, but somebody, you might get asked by the other agent, like, hey, did you forget to leave a couple zeros out? You know, like, you're allowed to submit whatever you want for earnest money, but every city has kind of their going rate of what people will offer for earnest money. I've seen also where real estate agents here will suggest that you do at least 1 to 2% of whatever your offer is. So I would say, again, it just boils down to how bad you want the home. You're putting your best foot forward, and when I say putting your best foot forward, you're putting your best foot forward in every aspect of the contract, the highest amount that you can submit, the shortest amount of, let's say, due diligence you feel comfortable with, the most aggressive earnest money that you feel comfortable with. You're basically putting your best foot forward, and your real estate agent will kind of help you understand what the going rate is for that particular city, that particular market, just because it is a little different in every city. But yeah, it can be, if you get a bunch of offers, $1,000 earnest money, it's, to me, to the way my brain works is, it's not that much of a risk. So for me, it's not like that big of a deal, right? Even $2,000-$3,000, not that big of a deal. I don't want to lose $2,000 or $3,000, but it's not like it's such an astronomical amount that I feel like, it's that risky. So again, depending on the price point you're playing in, if you're playing in the $1 million homes versus entry-level homes versus Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, or Kansas City, it's going to be different everywhere you go, so you just want to double check what the going rate is and what your agent would suggest might be competitive. I have seen where agents will submit an offer representing a client on one of my flips, and they said, hey, listen, I want you to recognize that we put a significant amount of earnest money down to show you how serious we are of as far as being a buyer, and my clients really love your house, and they want to purchase it, and then there's but it's, I don't know, like here in Salt Lake, again, for entry-level homes, I'm going to say usually it's anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. Maybe you're going to see 4 or 5 entry-level. Again, if you go higher, it'll be more.
And the only time you lose that money is if you, for some reason, pass the contract time or decide to back out of it, right?
Yeah, you'll lose that money for anything that you break in the contract that you agreed that you wouldn't break. So, due diligence deadline, if you pass that deadline and then you change your mind, you lose your earnest money. Or financing and appraisal deadline, which means that is the day that you can that you have now officially been approved for your loan. It's been appraised, and you can tell the seller, hey, listen, we are officially good to go. If you try to cancel your contract after that, then yes, you lose your earnest money there as well. And then of course, if you don't close, I have seen that. I had a buddy who flipped a home, and everything went totally okay. Up until the day of closing, my buddy went to the title company, did the closing, went back to work. Then he got a call from the title company saying, hey, just want to let you know the other title company who represented the buyers just called us and said the buyers never came in to execute the contract or execute the paperwork. They have decided they don't want to buy the house anymore, and they want to know if you'll give them the earnest money back. And that was the day of closing. And my buddy was like, what? He's like, no, they had, their due diligence period. Everything went okay with financing appraisal. I'm not giving them their earnest money back. They ended up suing my friend. He ended up winning the case, and they never got their earnest money back. For whatever reason, I don't exactly know the full story, but for whatever reason, the day of closing, they just decided that they didn't feel good about buying this house and says, no, we don't want it anymore. The day of closing, which is crazy because they just spent approximately 30 days going through everything to decide they wanted the home, and now they don't want it.
Makes sense. The whole purpose of this process is to obviously protect, the buyer has to completely stop the purchase or the selling process.
Yeah.
So to speak, as if someone's already put down an offer, so it's like you said, it's almost like starting over again for the seller.
Yes.
So it's like the cost of time thing for them.
Exactly. So now my buddy has to go back on the market. I think they had $3,000 earnest money, so he kept the $3,000. Like you said, it's the cost of the time lost. They have to go back on the market and start all over again, finding a new buyer. So yeah, obviously, that number can you get two offers the exact same. One's offering you 1,000, one's offering you 3,000, and if it's apples for apples, literally everywhere through the contract, you're going to go with the one that you're going to, with the person who's risking a little bit more high earnest money, typically. And there might be a reason why you might not, based off of conversation you had with the lender, going, one of the things that I'll do when I represent a buyer is I will keep in touch with this. When I represent the seller or myself, if I am the seller, I'll keep in touch with the buyer's lender and say, how's everything looking? Just want to make sure that no one's lost their job yet, the loan's still looking good, et cetera, right? So I might have a conversation. Let's say I get two offers submitted in at the same time. I'm going to reach out to both lenders who represent each buyer and have a discussion with them saying, how strong of an offer or how strong of a borrower is your client? And if they're like, they're pretty strong, they have a little credit issue, we're working on that, we should be good to go though, don't worry about our deadline. And then I call the next guy and he's like, oh, solid, high credit score, had a job for the last 10 years, makes a lot of money, whatever. Then I'm going to go apples for apples, I'm going to go with that guy. Just the other one's kind of maybe wishy-washy, may not be able to actually approve for the loan. The other one is, I'm getting the vibe that they're solid. Now, that's not a guarantee, that solid potential buyer in this economy could lose his job tomorrow, and now you're starting all over again. So, but yeah, it's nice to have that conversation to kind of get an idea. Yeah, good question. Did you have another one in regards to that?
No, I don't.
Okay, great. So, I am going to. Before the show started, you had asked me a little bit about the process of selling. Right? We're talking
yes.
right now. We're talking about buying. So what we're going to do is take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to answer your questions that you have in regards to what if you're the seller now. So we've been chatting about what if you're the buyer. The different things you have to look out for, make your offer competitive, make your offer strong in this crazy hot market that we're in, people getting outbid left and right. We talked about how to be as competitive as possible. Now let's talk about the seller, but we will do that when we come back from commercial, so stay tuned. Okay, before we part ways, in case you have a dog or know someone else who does have a dog, I wanted to take a quick second to show you the Snap Leash. The Snap Leash can literally do so many things, and I'm going to share with you one of the many cool things that it can do. As you can see, the Snap Leash is designed with two swivel hooks, one on each end. This end has a cushion stitched into it to make it comfortable when walking your dog. Now, all you have to do is take this swivel hook, put it into this very first grommet, and now you've got your handle. Okay, so now let's imagine you're at the park and you want to secure your pet quickly, safely, and easily to a park bench, a tree, or a pole because you just want to sit down and relax. Well, all you need to do is take this swivel hook, remove it from the very first grommet, wrap this leash around any size tree or pole or park bench, and put it into the appropriate grommet, and now you have secured your pet quickly, safely, and easily. And when it's time to head home, another great feature about the Snap Leash is you can simply wrap it around your waist for hands-free walking. Lastly, if you ever accidentally forget your waist bags at home, these grommets make a great place to fasten the waist bags so you never leave home without them. And if you want to see all of the other cool things that the Snap Leash can do, then please just click on the link below and find out why so many others are falling in love with the Snap Leash.